March 11th, 1990, Washington, D.C. On the afternoon of March 11th, I was very excited as I thought about the next day's activities. I had been elected president of the National Council on Independent Living and had dedicated myself and the organization to working with ADAPT to ensure that we do anything and everything necessary to get the Americans with Disabilities Act signed. At the same time, I was on a transit board and the executive director of Berkeley Center for Independent Living. I felt very fortunate that I was able to participate in this historical event. The next morning, I thought about the many times that I had been discriminated against, being forced to go to a special segregated school instead of an integrated one, not being allowed in a Continental Trailways bus because of my disability, and being told in a restaurant that we don't serve disabled people. But I also had very positive thoughts about what a great life and great opportunities I had to that point. I was determined to overcome the injustices of discrimination and create more positive environments for myself and others with disabilities. As I listened to the speakers on that day, I considered how life had prepared me for the moment of civil disobedience. Although I had taken part in such street theater before, this seemed like the crowning glory of them all. After the speeches, we started chanting, "What do we want? ADA. When do we want it? Now." The chants became louder and louder, and ultimately my good friend Monica Hall told me it was time to get out of my wheelchair and crawl up the steps to the Capitol building. Monica took my wheelchair, smiled, and said, "I'll meet you at the top." I started to climb step by step towards the top. At the very beginning, I looked up and thought I would never make it. But right below me was a 7-year-old girl who was making the same climb, step by step. Her wheelchair left somewhere below, but was somewhere above. This was Tom Owen's young niece. I felt an obligation to be a role model for this girl, and we ultimately made it to the top together. Some people may have thought that it was undignified for people in wheelchairs to crawl in that manner, but I felt that it was necessary to show the country what kinds of things people with disabilities have to face on a day-to-day basis. We have been willing to fight for what we believed in. The next day we visited the Capitol under the pretense of wanting to go on a tour. I was one of the only demonstrators wearing a tie. My board of directors insisted that as a CEO of a nonprofit organization, I might as well look professional if I were going to get arrested. There was a lovely woman who was volunteering at the Capitol to give tours over the summer, and as more and more people arrived, she approached me and shared her excitement in giving a tour to so many people with disabilities. A few minutes later, we all began chanting, and a congressman came to assure us the ADA would be passed. These individuals included House Speaker Foley, Representative Leader Michael, and Congressman Hoyer. We got louder and louder, and all of a sudden, the chains came out, and people began to chain themselves in a circle. The young volunteer came up to me and asked, "What do you think they're ready for their tour now?" I was sorry and somewhat amused to be the one to tell her that no one would be going on a tour that day, and that many individuals would probably be arrested. Soon after that, the Capitol Police began arresting people cutting chains. The whole process took 2 to 3 hours and resulted in my own arrest. We were all sent to the Capitol Jail and we were scheduled to appear before a judge late that night. In the jail, I had the honor of being with Wade Blank, Michael Hallberger, and many other disabled activists. It is ironic, perhaps fitting, that I oversee the implementation and compliance to transportation provisions for the ADA, the law that we all fought so hard for. I remember Evan Kemp watching the proceedings very closely from the back of the courtroom, and I remember our attorney, Tim Cook, informing the judge that we all plead guilty, that all the defendants were part of the Wheels of Justice campaign to end the segregation and discrimination toward people who use wheelchairs. All of the defendants were released, on their own recognizance and were given 1 year of probation. I was the only one who was fined because I had the job with significant income, and I was proud to donate $100 to the cause of justice and equality. Those few days in the passing of the ADA were monumental for me as an individual and activist, but also people, but also for people across the United States of America. We have now taken steps to move towards inclusion and away from segregation and discrimination of people with disabilities. I often think of these days and the lessons of power that brought me in my current job as a director of the Office of Civil Rights at the Federal Transit Administration. It is important to keep these memories fresh in our minds and to avoid complacency in the face of injustice.
Atlanta, 1990.